Bioneers. It's my people. This is where I feel it's the birthplace. It really is a joining of the midwives, the ideas, the ingenuity, the creativity, the sparks of inspiration. Bioneers brings all of these visions and all of this action together.
There's nothing that's off the table here. It's all possible, and it's all connected, and it's so liberating.
Hi, I'm Imara Jones, reporting with FSTV from the Bioneers Conference, that annual gathering of people from around the world and across the country who come together to try to figure out how to live in balance with themselves, with other people, and the natural world, and to talk about what the environment has to tell us about how to accomplish all of those three things. One of the things that we know is an enemy of the natural world is mass warfare and other types of mass violence, and that's why we are thrilled today to talk to Jodie Evans, who is the co-founder of CodePINK. Welcome.
Thank you.
As we said, you're very on trend today with CodePINK, so thank you for that. It's an excellent code of branding. Why, I alluded to it in my open, but why does CodePINK care about the climate crisis when it has its founding roots in being against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and continuing to be against the type of mass state violence and imperialism? How do you see that intersects with the environment?
Well, CodePINK actually was born out of Bioneers.
Oh!
Yeah. So, one Bioneers about 20 years ago, Diane Wilson, did one of the final keynotes. And at the end, and Diane Wilson's a fisherwoman on the Texas Gulf who just won $50 million against Alcoa for dumping in the,
oh,
in
wow.
the Gulf. So, at the end of her talk, she said, "A reasonable woman conforms to the world. An unreasonable woman has the world conform to her. May we all be unreasonable women." So I was on the board of Bioneers at the time, and Nina and I decided to pull together a gathering at a place I have in Southern California of unreasonable women to talk about what we should do together. And it was full of many of the women that are here today: Rachel Bagby, Caroline Casey, and Catherine Porter, Pramila Jayapal that you heard today was there. And it really was to think about, what do we do for the planet? We're unreasonable women, and how do we get really unreasonable about the planet? And Caroline Casey said, we're going to call Code Pink. Well, she actually said we're going to call Code Hot Pink. I'll get to that later. So we decided to call Code Hot Pink. It was right when Bush was frightening the American people to war with Code Red, Code Orange, Code Yellow.
Oh,
Remember
right.
That's right. So
That's
we were
right.
laughing about his color-coded alerts and his duct tape.
That's right.
And said, okay, it's Code Hot Pink. And the plan was to go naked on the Texas Gulf and say, we're not indecent, what you're doing to the Gulf is indecent. And that was our plan. Then we all left, and Bhopal in India was going to be lessened from a crime to a misdemeanor. So we went down and sat outside Dow Chemical in a hunger strike with the people in India to say, no, you can't do this. And we sat in Diane's truck, and we just rotated. And Pramila and I went down for about 5 days. We were on a hunger strike, so we were supporting Diane on her hunger strike. And at the end of August, we stopped it, and it's still a crime what happened in Bhopal. Yes.
Yes.
A few days after that, Bush decides, remember, you don't sell a war in August, you sell it in September?
Right.
So it's September, and Bush is selling the war on Iraq. So we go, Diane, started with Diane and Medea, and they sat behind Donald Rumsfeld with a big sign when he was testifying to Congress that said, let the inspections work, because he was trying to say that.
Right, I remember that.
And then we all decided to do a big rally and say, no war in Iraq. That's the day we decided to call it Code Pink and a Code Hot Pink, but we went online to do the website, and Code Hot Pink was a porn site. So we had to kind of change it a little to Code Pink.
Right.
And we started that day, and it was Diane and Caroline Casey and Starhawk and Medea and I in Washington. And we said, okay, he's going to announce this war. We're going to be outside of the White House. We started the morning at the White House. Diane got up on the fence, the giant fence, climbed up. We did a big sign that said, no war in Iraq. Well, the news has got the cameras on it. They run from the Rose Garden, has the cameras on. They think it's a terrorist, and the Secret Service gets her down and finds out she's an anti-war activist. It disappears from the news. Then we go to the halls of Congress and we painted little pink doves of peace. We took our shirts off, pinned the doves of peace to our bra, and on our bellies it said, "Read my tits, no war in Iraq." And we had conversations with all the members of Congress about why this was wrong. Because no voice was in Congress saying it was wrong. All the voices were saying we should go to war. And then we went to disrupt the Hyde hearing that day. And because they'd seen us, playing around on the steps, all the cameras were on us. And we got up and we said, the world does not want this war. And we were kicked out. So that was the first day of CodePINK, which followed by a vigil every day outside the White House. Every day, no matter how cold, no matter how much snow, we were outside the White House in vigil saying no war in Iraq. Then we went to Iraq. We crossed the desert. From Amman, Jordan. We went in cars.
Oh, wow.
We got to the border. Nobody there to greet us. We said, we're here. We're peace activists. We don't think there should be a war in Iraq. We spent 7 days there. We went to the oil refineries with a big banner, that said, "No blood for oil." We gave our blood at the oil refinery. Matter of fact, the guy who took our blood just reached out from Texas. He got out of Iraq and he's in Texas now. And then the day that Powell spoke at the UN, and said, there were weapons of mass destruction. We'd been everywhere. That we knew there were no weapons of mass destruction. We had spoke to the inspectors, no weapons of mass destruction. So we were outside the Iraq Communication Center where 300 people from around the world went up to hear Colin Powell. And we had a big sign and some gas nozzles, and we said, we found the smoking gun. And it was a gas nozzle. So that was the beginning of CodePINK, and we have been in the face of power ever since, exposing the lies, exposing the violence. We took on drones when 95% of the people in the U.S. thought drones were a good idea, got it down to 50, because drone pilots kill themselves in suicide more often than any other pilot. And it's maybe a 2% hit. That means 98% of the people you hit are innocent. That's a crime. I mean, I just want to say, Bush put them in Guantanamo, and most of them are out. Obama just murdered them, including American citizens with drones. So we went to Pakistan and Yemen and met with the drone victims. We're able to bring back the stories to Congress and say, what's happening here is horrible. And the drone strikes were cut in like a quarter. Cut by 3/4. They're back up with Trump again. We've raised the awareness about the Yemen war and the U.S. engagement in the Yemen war, not only our bombs, but the military telling them where to strike and giving them coverage and refueling the planes while we kill, kids in buses and weddings and create the greatest humanitarian crisis on the planet. But we don't read about that much, right? But that's the U.S. We're doing that. We're doing that with no vote from Congress. We are killing people every day. And then there's Iran. Once we didn't stop the war on Iraq, we said then we're going to stop the next war now, and that was Iran. And we've done many interventions where we have been able to stop the war in Iran, but it's like a daily work because they really, really, really want to pounce on Iran, and they are. The sanctions on Iran are horrific. The sanctions on Iraq were horrific, and 500,000 children died. Well, right now in Iran, we have decimated the middle class. People can't get medicine. People are dying of cancer that don't need to die of cancer.
Wow.
It's really, really horrible. And I was just there. And I want to say, what we do is we attack these countries of such beautiful people. I mean, Iraq was socialism. Everyone had free education, free healthcare. It was the most beautiful people, most beautiful country. Women ran everything. They were not covered. It was a secular Muslim country.
Right.
We destroyed it. We can't do that to Iran. But I was just there, and the people still, even though we're horrible and lie and break our promises, so welcoming, so generous, so kind. And the thought of dropping bombs on that country is unthinkable.
What's the connection between oil companies who are behind, in part, covering up the climate crisis and the wars that you're talking about?
The wars are all about oil. All about oil. I mean, the oil in Iraq was the public oil. It belonged to the people. It funded their education and health care. Oh, that can't be. We need it to be,
Privatized.
capitalized and privatized. Libya. money from oil belonged to the people. Matter of fact, he was going to take it off the dollar. That's why he's dead, and that country got bombed with absolutely no agreement. Just Hillary Clinton saying, "Fine, you can bomb." So it's the whole thing is about oil and oil power and destabilization and who has the power and is it Saudi and is it Iran and and the sightings, and now look at what's happening to the poor Kurds. Oh my God, the poor Kurds. I mean, the PKK, a Kurdish organization that was created to save the Kurdish people, and is totally egalitarian. Women and men have equal power. I mean, it's a beautiful people, a beautiful way of being together. The U.S. decided to call them terrorists. While what's more terrorist than with the act that we just did, leaving them to the wolves?
And
it's not that I don't think the U.S. should have pulled out of Syria, but not the way that happened.
But it's also the case where the PKK is where the oil is.
Of course, the whole Middle East is
in northern
Iraq
Syria.
And Syria, they want to keep control
But
of
it's
that,
also
and
in
now
northern
Turkey
Syria.
wants the oil. Of course, it's all about oil.
Yeah. So
Imagine if we were on all renewables and no oil, we would have no wars, right? But not only that, do you know that war is the biggest contributor to climate change? The biggest contributor. How much the carbon cost of war and militarism. We have 800 bases, the amount of oil they use, the amount of destruction to the planet.
That's right. I mean, how much oil it takes just to keep the planes and those.
Oh yeah, but there's so many ways it destroys the planet.
Yeah. So
My T-shirt: War is not green.
War is not green. It's not green for the planet or the people, right? It's not a sustaining force.
It creates greed and corruption. I executive produced a film that talked about the weapons trade, and what one of the weapons traders said was that why don't they just give us the money, because weapons trade is never about the weapons, it's always about greed. So they could just quit making the weapons and we could just be handing the money around. So in the meantime, that greed is $1.4 trillion a year of weapons are sold. What happens to those weapons? Where are they? Look at all those weapons that were taken from Iraq and taken from Libya after we bombed and destroyed them that became ISIS.
That's right.
So, we created ISIS and then we fight them. So we take all our tax dollars, create the problem, and then fight it.
Are you hopeful that the American people seem to be more reticent and skeptical of wars, or do you believe that they are?
They are. Because you're really seeing it even in the Republican Party.
Right.
I mean, the Soros and the Koch brothers have partnered to end wars. I mean, capitalists don't think war is a really good idea. Even so, it's like you've got both sides of the aisle. Look, we got a bill through Congress, a War Powers Act bill on Yemen that went through Congress and the Senate, and Trump vetoed it.
Right.
But, think of how few bills have gotten through that got through.
That's right.
Because, I mean, it's devastating, and there's some Republicans that look at what we're doing to Yemen and can't stomach it.
So how do we get
actually Christian?
How do we get Americans more to make this link between the environment and peace?
So one of the many things we do as CodePINK is we work with lots of organizations to try to bring it into their platform. One of them is the Women's March. Another one is the Poor People's Campaign, and Reverend Barber has really embraced that he gets that Martin Luther King was right, that militarism is the third of, poverty, racism, and militarism. He really gets that, and, kind of how it is its own racism. Look who we're always bombing. And also that it's the money from war that could feed all the needs. With the money from war, you could feed, you could have Medicare for all. You could pay off the school debts. I mean, it's $1 trillion a year. And worse than that, even worse than how much money it is the fact that you're making the rich richer. So $400,000 of the military budget each year is spent on weapons companies. Your schools, your churches, your pension plan, your states, and your cities are invested in those weapons companies,
Right.
meaning they're making a killing on killing. What it means is that killing people are making a killing people. And so that's literally taking your tax dollars, funneling through a weapons company, and making the rich richer.
Right.
I mean, doesn't that make you want to, scream?
Yeah.
Me furious.
Of course.
Like, what the
You know?
That's not right. That's taking food. I mean, there are homeless people in the streets of my city that I feel literally are being raped by the weapons companies. Those weapons are not necessary. Here's an example. What just happened in Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia has $70 billion of weapons. And I think that they just bought, like, in 1 year, that fire that they started on that oil field, it was a $10,000 drone.
Right, the Iran.
So
yeah.
the towers coming down,
Yeah.
we have spent $5 trillion.
That's right.
What did they spend? So we're in these, we're, totally lost even at what it is to be able to defend, because we're not thinking defensive, we're thinking offensive, and we're being the terrorists in the world. And so at CodePINK, we try to get in the way of that story. We're in Congress almost every day because there's a hearing on something where somebody else is lying and somebody else is trying to rationalize the war is the answer, and there is no rationalization for war. I mean, how could you do that? Like, after we've just spent all this money, destroyed a country, and got kicked out of Iraq, look what we've done to Afghanistan. Look what we've done to Afghanistan. Heartbreaking. And we're, like, at the brinks.
When you look out on 2020 and look at the election, are you hopeful or you're not hopeful? Where are you? Because it seems like a lot of the things that you're saying in terms of the things that you believe are driving what's going wrong are improving, right? You're saying that the American people are increasingly against war.
Yeah, but
You've
the
stopped.
structure of America is we're talking about people of color being, divested from being able to vote. We're talking about corruption. We're talking about the corporations paying for the elections. We're talking about Facebook and Twitter, where the right was able to buy all those ads. I don't know if you've seen The Great Act. It doesn't matter. It's like not in the system anymore. So it's a little hard to believe in elections when you watch the corruption around elections. I believe everyone should be engaged, and that doesn't mean ever. The corruption, the violence, the greed should never stop us from being beautiful actors for peace and justice.
Right.
Ever.
So
Matter
dependent
of
of
fact,
the
it
government.
should inspire us to get deeper so that we can figure out the levers that we need to be pulling. But so here's, for me, I call it the war economy. There's a war economy. I will not be able to end war until I can stop the war economy, because war serves the war economy. The destructive, extractive, oppressive economy, which is killing you, our communities, and the planet. But there's another economy. It's the peace economy. It's the giving, sharing, caring, thriving, relational, resilient economy without which none of us would be alive. It is what is giving us life. It's everything that gives to us, but the war economy is strangling it, because it's creating austerity programs that don't fund education, don't fund healthcare, don't fund childcare, don't fund the things that care for us, and don't make corporations pay the taxes to pay back what they've stolen from the worker. So we, how I balance this, I looked at it like a flood. All that darkness is like our flood, like our mythological flood. So when you think of a flood, what did Noah do? He built an ark. So what is the ark? It's cultivating our local peace economies. Because if you cultivate connection and relationship and the exposure of that economy that isn't serving the people, then you start to take yourself off of it and not thinking that thing that tells you you're separate and disconnected and there's scarcity, but instead of being connected to neighbors and realizing it's abundant and that we can solve these problems, there are solutions, like Paul Hawkins said, to work from the solutions, and they're in all of us. Well, I'm more interested in that people power, because it's making happen in the cities where you see the peace economy thriving. Wonderful things are happening. People are feeding each other. They're creating solutions. They've given up on the structures and policies. Like, whatever. Okay, I'm going to show up and vote, but I'm also going to build from the grassroots power. Alexandria Cortez. That's from the peace economy, man. She's like rising up. There's a gazillions of those. Let's practice at home. Let's learn at home. Let's connect each other. Let's solve the problems together. Let's remember what it's like to be human and connected and in love. And that will create peace.
Right.
And then we'll be able to pull the structures down and not let corporations fund our elections anymore, not let corporations tamper with our election devices anymore, not let anyone be taken away from being able to vote that lives in a country that is not democracy, and we'll, get our democracy back. But we've got to start locally.
Well, thank you for taking the time to tell us how we can build a peace economy and talk about this link between climate change, the environment, and war. Really appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thank you for joining us from Bioneers. Stay tuned here on FSTV.